Okay, folks. First video in a couple days. It's it's a little past 6:30 a.m. I'm sitting in the parking lot at the local Walmart, and trying to make sure my phone stays upright. I have it propped up on the driver wheel, like usual, like I've gotten into the habit of doing. But so today I'm considering this Nofap day one. Yesterday was supposed to be day one, but binging happened. I guess it's supposed to be expected. You relapse after 6 months. It's kind of like your mind, your body, all this stuff isn't kind of used to that whole rush, and you kind of get pulled back into it. But I'm probably unlike I think last time. A lot of these times when I've done these like long streaks, it's kind of like strange, but like I'll end up sort of logging back in, if you will, when I'm through a week or two or three, or a few days or something like that. But I'm mostly just doing this right now because I'm kind of I'm obviously not in a great spot. I know I lost a subscriber, probably because they just didn't want to hear my negative ness. But I do appreciate those who have stuck with me, the 80 something that have decided to subscribe and stay subscribed over these times where I've had my ups and downs and all that. My neck is I ain't feeling too great. I've been up all night basically. I've kind of like gotten into that habit yet again. When you don't have a set schedule and you don't have to be up early in the morning, it's kind of like and you're not coming home from work all tired and all that. It's like just kind of happens, and I have all this time to think now, for better or for worse. And I'm probably going to reach out to my old boss again to see if there's any sort of update. I haven't been in contact with him for a while. Or if maybe I'm going to ask him, okay, do I need to apply to a specific position? Do I need to contact someone else? That sort of thing. But I'm kind of hanging tight with that. Luckily, it sounds like, even though they're taking time to hire new people, I left on at least a good enough of a note that it was like, okay, if he wants to come back, he can come back, that sort of thing. But, Dark Magician talked about how, when one of these things happen, oftentimes you go through a lot of like self-reflection and all that. And, I do appreciate people's attempts to provide me with like helpful feedback, whether or not I 100% agree with their interpretation or take on things. It's really helpful, even just in a sort of psychological or like mental health sense, just to have a dialogue and have people actually like caring enough to take time out of their finite lives to give me their take on things. At least as long as it's like constructive criticism. Obviously I don't want destructive stuff. I don't think anybody really wants that. It's not helpful. And I don't honestly understand folks who go out of their way to do that to someone. Like in the past, if I've gotten frustrated or annoyed with some other no-fappers, it's only really been from my angle of like wanting to see them succeed, wanting them to finally make that turn, or turn that corner, and be able to log in and say, hey, I broke this addiction or this compulsion, and my life's a lot better. But yeah, so I'm going through some reflection right now. There's a lot to unpack, obviously, because I'm probably going to title this video this sort of thing. But what I'm really facing right now, if I wanted to sum it all up, is it's basically being zeroed out. Yeah, because I lost the job. I'm gonna be emailing the professor today, because I just I kind of given up on the class at this point. I kind of did my sort of mental calculus, and it's kind of like, okay, here's here's the best case scenario. The best case scenario is I just take the F, or I get a W or a WU, and I have to retake the class later. And in the meantime, I mean, there's other classes I can take, and it's not like I won't have the opportunity to take it again. And, you know, I'll be able to go in with, like, my eyes wide open and really understanding, like, okay, this is what I'm up against. This is what I'm, you know, the material I'll be expected to, you know, do well on and all that kind of stuff and understand. And hopefully, if I, you know, do that next time, and let's say, I mean, it'd be best if it was, like, during the fall, but if it was during the spring, I'd at least have, like, a month and a half, maybe, to just buckle down and study beforehand. And, if it was the summer, then I would have about 3 months. So I could kind of do my prep work, you know, before I go in, which is something that I remember back when I had to go retake those classes. It was back fall 2017, and I was having to try to get myself, you know, through sort of the grinder. I shouldn't use the term grinder. God, I'm almost like of the mindset to want to re-record this video, but then it would seem all edited. But because that term is taken on a whole different meaning, jeez, what should I? I'm not going to go off on a tangent about how I don't like the way the world has become. I've already done that enough. But back in fall 2017, just sort of map things out. I had just got myself off academic probation. I'd taken some general ed classes and, you know, some other stuff. And I had basically gotten high enough grades to get myself out of probation, which I had gotten myself onto the preceding fall, the preceding semester before, or yeah, the preceding fall of 2016. I got myself off probation, but then that summer, when I was looking towards, you know, making a second run, and it would have been a final run, and it turned out to be, you know, a final run in the positive sense on those classes, which are they're basically like yeah, I could probably use weeding out. They are the two classes for junior year. They're really like the weeder classes. Because basically, like with most engineering, you know, sort of with most engineering majors or programs, it's like, I think it's like freshman or sophomore year, it's kind of like you have your classes that determine whether or not you're going to make it to upper division engineering. And that's the first round where it's like, okay, you know, are you meant to be an engineer or not? Can you you know, do your calculus and your physics and your chemistry and that sort of thing? And then there's the second upper division, sort of weeding out, and those two classes were the ones that I'd failed in 2016. And going into those, you know, the second time around, it was like during that summer, I tried to you know, get my hands on the textbooks, and you know, I think I was down in you know, my parents' home, and I didn't have the textbooks on me. They were sitting up here in my you know, room basically. So I essentially went and ordered another copy of them, you know, and I was like studying off of those, and I was trying to get myself into that sort of mindset, their mentality, and you know, my study materials I had left over. I was trying to do that sort of prep work. And that combined with just like a different like study routine when I was back up here, you know, that was kind of, that did the trick. And it was sort of like, you know, this was against the backdrop of like that girl in college going around and doing all of the stuff she was doing to just, you know, mess with me and mess with my head, mess with my mind, that sort of deal, you know, the disgruntled one. And somehow I got through all that, but essentially, like, with this class that I'm, you know, I mean, I'll just say I'm failing it. I mean, I could technically go and like pass the class, I suppose, you know, in the undergrad sense of getting a C or a C minus. But as far as my sort of standards are right now, that's not good enough. So I'm just gonna say that I'm failing the class essentially. Sorry, I keep looking down. I'm kind of like picking at myself. I have some issues with my nails, and I think I did make a video talking about that, but then I kind of deleted it for some reason. But you know, if I get into talking about health issues later, I might, you know, get into that. But back on topic. So the class right now, I'm gonna email the professor. I mean, I'm not required to, but it's sort of like a best practices sort of thing. Explain to my situation, because man, it's really messed up. If I at least had my class going well, I could at least have that. I wouldn't have lost everything. I wouldn't feel zeroed out, basically. I would be like, oh well, lost the crummy job, and you know, I don't have to deal with that anymore, and I got all this extra time in my hands, and I can go and blah 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 blah. But the class is, you know, already funked up, and a lot of the reason why I got funked up was honestly like there was a couple factors. And I remember now that, you know, if I was to talk to my my family about it, I could, like, you know, relate the chain of events. Excuse me, but it was, I think it was back in February. Back when my well, this is a week before my dad had his stroke. See, what happened was on the weekends, and you know, I really need to like make it a point to, you know, call my grandma, assuming I have the opportunity to, because she's, you know, she's in her 90s now. But I would usually like call my grandma up on a Saturday or Sunday and just you know, talk with her, you know, because she's in her 90s, and it's one of those things where it's like, you know how it is, like they say, like, oh, you know, you don't talk to them now, you're gonna regret, you know, when they're gone, and that you just didn't take the time to talk with them, you know. Especially when, you know, I'm trying to stay on topic here, but especially when it's like, you know, someone like my grandma who's, you know, now in her 90s, and like she could literally like tell me what it was really like to be alive during the Great Depression, to be alive when, you know, when all those events were down, World War II, the lead up to World War II. She probably remembers, like, you know, hearing on the radio, you know, that, you know, Hitler had taken power in Germany, and, you know, what was happening in Japan and in Italy with Mussolini, you know, Japan with Tojo and all that. And she probably would remember, you know, what it was like to hear, you know, FDR on the radio, you know, giving his December 7th, 1941 speech, you know. And it's like, that's like the last link I have to that era, you know, that I can actually literally, you know, talk to someone who's alive during that time. And I'm hoping that as I speak right now, it's not too late. You know, I would need to make it a point to call her. But back in February, you know, I had a sort of choice, and it was either call up my grandma or call up my folks. And I actually decided to call up my folks, call up my dad, because, you know, I wanted to talk with them before I talked with my grandma. Some of it has to do with just, you know, wanting to know, hey, have you been in contact with her? How's she doing? That sort of thing. Should I call now? That sort of deal. And the other half of it is because, like, because stuff that's been going on with my family, you know, financially and otherwise, my parents might not want my grandma to know. You know, it's one of those sorts of situations where it's like, oh, don't tell her what we're going through. You know, she's gonna worry, and she's in her 90s, and we don't want her to worry, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And some of it also is, you know, my mom wanting to like save face, because you know, a lot of things that are going on financially can be tied directly or indirectly back to certain decisions that my mom has made, you know, over the last decade, and problems that she's, you know, caused that the family didn't have and we didn't need. But so I called up my dad, and this is the time, you know, I think I did make a video about it where it was like I used the expression that I felt that my dad was fading away. And truth be told, it was because he was just really tired and worn out and stressed out and all that. But it kind of felt like I was losing my dad at that point. And I was really like bummed about it. I was really down about it. And, you know, it turned out that apparently my sister had been in and out of the hospital 6 times in the preceding 3 weeks from that time. And, you know, my dad, even though my sister, I mean, I gotta give her some credit, okay? Like, because, like, you know, at the very least, because she apparently, like, drove herself to the hospital, like, I think it was every one of those times, or it was like all but like 1 or 2 times, you know, where it was too bad. She was in a lot of pain. She has I'm not going to go into you know, extreme details here, because, you know, a lot of it's just like, you know, we're talking about like, you know, private medical information and that sort of thing, like the kind of stuff you don't want to announce to the world. There's things that, you know, I'll talk about stuff that I might be dealing with, because it's not necessarily super major, but it's also stuff that affects my life, and it's, you know, it's me making the decision to talk about my own stuff. But you know, needless to say, that whole chain of events, it was really like draining my dad. And, you know, that combined with financial problems, the whole job search, especially at his age, you know, I mean, folks in my, you know, age group, we've talked about, you know, gone on about how, oh, you know, like if you're in your 20s or even in your 30s, companies don't want to hire you, don't got enough experience. Well, there's the other extreme where it's like, you know, you're an old man or an old woman and they don't want to hire you because you're just, you know, you're too old, and they don't think that you're going to be there for long, and you're, you know, blah, blah, blah. They have their reasons. But all of that, you know, as it turns out, was just wearing down on my dad, and he was just, you know, exhausted at that point. Well, I got all super worried about him. And so much of it has to do with the fact that I know a lot of the details about what led up to my own grandpa's death. And my grandpa was like 66 when he passed away back in 1992. You can kind of do the math on when he was born. And, you know, he was, by and large, I mean, I know from what I heard about him and what the few memories I have, well, the few memories have of him, he didn't really show that side to me. But from what I heard of him, you know, there were times where he had his days and his nights where he didn't necessarily have the strength or the willpower to sort of fight his inner demons, if you will. And, you know, things broke down, and a lot of it revolved around, I think, him attempting to cope with a lot of his troubles in life with alcohol. Some of it had to do with, like, you know, the nature of the relationship between him and my grandma. Some of it had to do with the nature of his relationship with my adopted uncle. But honestly, like, the more I've, you know, dug in and found out about what his experience growing up on a farm out in Wisconsin, you know, during the Great Depression, being the oldest, you know, of 4 kids, you know, having to take a lot of things on his shoulder that, you know, forced him to sort of sacrifice a lot of what could have been his future, you know, and then going off to fight in World War II in the United States Navy, and the horrors of war that he saw out there in the Pacific. Like, you know, he had a lot of trauma that he went through, but he was by and large very stoic about it. You know, it's very like German American sort of a thing, possibly combined with, you know, I mean, other branches of the family, but the, you know, German and some of the French and the Austrian American, and I think there's some Swiss, and there's possibly some Dutch. Yeah, from what I heard, there's some Swiss ancestry there. But, you know, that predominantly like predominantly Germanic, American sort of stoicism. You know, like Bill Burr, he jokes about, being German and Irish, and, you know, how those two ethnicities combined together, it kind of makes you super stoic. The background, the cultural, you know, attitudes towards, you know, pain and suffering, and, you know, maybe your back's killing you, but, you know you got, you know, 50 different chores to do, and you got things to do around the house, and you're just gonna go and hack it and get it done. You know, you're not gonna be sitting there having a therapy session on the couch talking about how, oh, this is hurting you and that sucks and you're not feeling this and that, in your life, but you just get up and you go and do it. And he was very much like that, but it's sort of like his way of trying to cope with all of that. It's one of the main things that led to his early death. That combined with just high blood pressure from all the stress and anxiety he was dealing with from various situations that were, sort of chronic situations going on in the family. But I had all of that. I have all of that going in my mind. And whenever I hear stuff going bad with my dad, I think, crap, is like this repeating in the next generation, meaning the next generation from my grandparents, meaning my parents' generation. Is this going on again? Am I going to be, walking behind my father's, casket as they're leading it down the down the path to his grave? Is that going to be me in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, that sort of thing? And I had all those thoughts going in my head, and it's sort of like, I've said this in the past, that the people who are causing the problems, they're the ones who they're like, they're just unreceptive to, and in fact, almost like hostile to any sort of criticism or hearing the truth. Hey, this is what your actions are doing. You need to change. It's not about just feeling bad. You need to stop this sort of stuff. And my dad will be there. He'll be listening. He'll be willing to hear me out. But it's like he's not the one causing the problem. Well, that Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I think I fell asleep at like 4:30, and I had to be up like 5:36 in the morning. I think I was a bit late that day, on that Monday. And I think it was like either Tuesday or Wednesday that that incident happened where I was humiliated by my supervisor, where she just like yelled at me in front of everybody about how, I wasn't fulfilling my responsibilities. This is why, we have this system and you need to stick with this and blah, blah, blah. Because we have this system there for making sure that, the different labs were properly supplied with different materials. And essentially whoever was the quote unquote lab owner would have to go in. At the end of every day, the idea was to go and check the lab and then, sort of guesstimate, okay, do we have enough of this? Do we have enough of that? And then we have these, they're called Kanban cards. One side's green, the other side's red. And they have, listed on there, okay, recommended amount required or wanted, desired minimum, and obviously description of the item itself and its part number and all that. And because I was so dang tired, and I don't remember if it was one of those days where I was just sort of like starting to really get, I had that first sort of instance of being kind of bent out of shape about something having to do with the girl, or if it was having to deal with that dickhead prick coworker. But it was like a combination of things. It was like being so exhausted, so stressed out and worried about my father, dealing with I know I had to deal with a dickhead coworker. I could probably go back and watch the videos again, but there was that there. I don't know if that was if that was like, it was so bad that week, but that was a sort of general sort of, I was having to deal with that guy who was a real a-hole. And some weeks it was worse, some weeks it wasn't as bad. I don't know if that was one of the weeks and it was as bad, but due to exhaustion and stress and possibly some other factors. I'll say possibly some other factors because I don't remember if that week it was one of those weeks where I was like, it was the romantic workplace garbage thing had started up, or if it was just, the exhaustion, the stress, and the dickhead coworker. But there was this, sort of a confluence of factors which led me to not flipping one of the Kanban cards, which, as it turned out, they needed those items for the build the next day. And I got yelled at by my supervisor in front of everyone. And she apologized to me for some other similar scenario at a different time, but she never apologized to me for humiliating me in front of everyone. And I know that probably got spread around throughout the rest of the team, but that was about like halfway through the week. I think it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday that happened. And that was the week that the lab assignment was given out, and it was due on a Friday night. And I was so freaking exhausted, stressed out, just worn the heck out that whole week. And I tried to do what I could, but see, that was the week leading into the weekend where, like I said, I accidentally saved the files in the wrong format. It was too late, couldn't turn it in. And then, of course, that week, I don't remember if it was on the Sunday or the next week, excuse me. Not that week, but the week that when I was supposed to try and turn it in, last chance to turn it in, it was like a Monday the next week. The week after the whole humiliation incident. Sorry if I'm kind of jumbling things up. I'm a bit tired, but that next week was when my dad had his stroke. And I was trying to scramble and get this stuff done. And I don't remember if it was on the Sunday, Monday, or a Tuesday when he had that. And I was, getting these frantic calls from my mom, and things went down like that. But it was this whole like perfect storm, and that's why I'm having to drop the class, whether I'm dropping in the sense of, filling all these forms and getting an actual W, or getting a WU, or just, choosing to flunk it so I can retake it later. Those two combined. And then, of course, the whole experience with the girl, not just the getting fired, but that specific experience itself, that whole like series, that chain of events. And then finally summing it up all with relapsing, because it's sort of like, I'm looking at also, it's interesting that I'm looking at this also, thinking of zeroed out and that sort of concept, because, it's like, I started watching clips from Fight Club again. And Fight Club, is a book and eventually like a movie that, I remember when it came out, or when it, entered into my life, and I was reading the book and then I saw the movie, and it was such a defining sort of influence for myself. I think back, because it's such a late 90s, early 2000s, almost like someone from Generation X, not only talking about their experience of life, as a man, masculinity and all that sort of stuff, but almost like Gen X trying to, educate or inform the millennial generation, and maybe from a perspective of, being like an older brother and like wanting the millennials not to end up in the same mess. But, watching clips from that, and like, this guy, I don't remember who was doing the analysis, but he was talking about how, like, there's sort of talk on Fight Club about like how, and this is in tandem, by the way, with me watching Rollo Tomasi talk about being zeroed out, but talking about how, people end up identifying with their jobs, with how much money they have in the bank. Obviously also talking about them identifying with their relationships and seeing themselves as that, And in addition to that, for me, these last 6 months, I've been the Nofap guy who's getting those days knocked down, and I'm, I'm half a year through of Nofap, and, I'm knocking all these milestones and and, when I get to 9 months, when I get to a year, all that sort of stuff. And it's sort of like I've had all of that wiped out, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out how the heck I'm going to bounce back from that. I'm having to try and reinvent myself, and I'm having all these sort of emotions and and thoughts and memories running through my head, and I don't know how to really articulate it, because you see, for one thing, every time these things happen, you get a feeling of being set back, even if you're not as far as being, if you're not being set back as far as you think you are, but you feel that, and you feel like a repetitiveness, like with that girl, that whole dynamic was like, and so much of why, I felt like I had to sort of, destroy that whole, setup, get the heck out of that job. It wasn't just because of the dickhead coworker, but it was sort of like, the situation with the girl. It was sort of a replay yet again of the situation I went through at least a couple times. I mean, the one I talked about the most was the girl in college, the girl in the last few years of college. But it was like a replay of that. And I feel like I'm going through that. I'm sort of like, it's almost like I'm wondering, like, okay, how many more times before I learn my lesson and I get it right, How many more times before I meet a girl who sets my heart on fire, and, I'm like crazy head over heels for her, but this time, I'm somehow able to reel it in, and kind of like, you see those like old cartoons where like the is it Tom and Jerry? Remember, Jerry's the mouse, and yeah, Tomcat, where he sees like this bodacious babe, cat, and then he like, jumps up, and then his tongue falls out and he has to grab, roll it back in, like, okay, how many more times before like that sort of thing happens, but this time I get it right and I get the girl, like having that stuff go through my mind. And the truth is, for one thing, let's say we're talking about this class. We're not talking about the girl. We're not talking about my job or my, my career, whatever. Let's just say that we're talking about, education here. I'm getting good grades, bouncing back from this, and ending up with the GPA I need to have in order to get into grad school. Excuse me. How can I do things in the future, and how can I think of things in the future, and how can I be in the future such that I'm no longer affected the way I'm affected when these things happen, so that I can respond in a different way? Because in the future, I take that class again, let's just say best case scenario, my finances improve even more. I get another job, my finances improve, I cut out any sort of toxic influences, whatever, and I just go pedal to the metal, gung-ho. And let's say, I'm taking a class for the summer, taking class in the fall, I'm knocking things down again, I'm going at that again. Like, how do I have to act, think, and be in the future such that if something like this does happen, a sort of perfect storm of just crummy, circumstances, such that when I do end up responding to, these things, that I get through it, that I don't get zeroed out again. Because like this kind of stuff, I don't like putting this into words, because sometimes I feel almost like, words have power, and, on some sort of esoteric level, it's almost like manifesting, whatever you're talking about to a certain extent. But, it's like things are going to happen in the future. I could end up getting a job at the old place again, and things could work out just fine in that sense, I could be doing that, and that could be going great. I could have another situation with another girl. It could be a girl in my class. You know, could be a girl in my class. How am I going to respond in that way, in that situation? Not that way, but in that situation, what way am I going to respond? And how can I be, think, and act so that this kind of stuff just doesn't happen anymore? Because, I'll tell you, like, it's almost like if a girl has a certain set of characteristics and, certain things happen in a certain way, it almost seems like it's almost like, like the girl or the whatever, person, it's almost like they like hack into my mental firmware, my mind, and they sort of go around flipping switches, cutting wires, or inserting commands or subroutines into my mind, which is almost like short circuits my ability. Because, like, I'll tell you that 95% of the time I'm stoic as heck when I'm just living my life. But then it's almost like, some girl comes along and she's got the right set of physical characteristics and attitude and mentality, and like she knows how to get guys wrapped around her finger, and it's like I can't help but fall head over heels for her. And then I'm at her mercy. I'm at her freaking mercy. Like, I handed over the keys to my life, to her, and then she can just drive that whichever way she wants to. And, how do I not have that happen? And how do I have that not happen and still remain a human being who can desire and, dare I say, love, Because, man, one day, and this may never happen, but there's always that desire, that hope, and it's, that idealism. It's that freaking idealism, which, it can inspire you to keep going and overcome all sorts of odds, but it can also be your undoing. And it's kind of like some part of me will always want and always dream of finding that girl who, she has all those things, and she just, finally things click, and it undoes everything else. It almost like puts everything else in a different perspective of like, well, that experience sucked with this girl at, the place I used to work at. And that sucked with that girl in college, and that other girl in college, and my ex-girlfriend and my other ex-girlfriend, and that sort of thing. But I had to go through it. I went through it. It sucked. And this girl's got all those things that those girls had, and more to boot. And she wants a guy like you, not because she's in her epiphany phase and she's had all her fun and she's got her career, but because because the stars aligned, and she has all these influences in her life that shaped her into being the kind of woman who, at a young age, when she's at her physical peak, that she wants a guy who's at his peak, that sort of thing, and have everything line up in that sort of sense. And I say this understanding that there's going to be problems in the future, and I don't know how to respond to those sorts of things. I have certain things that just make me really, really angry, and I have certain things that make me really despondent. And if you put all those things together in a perfect storm sort of scenario, I don't know how to respond to overcome those things. I don't know how to respond to have a good outcome. And I kind of feel at the mercy of circumstance. Like, for these last 6 months, for the most part, I was able to somehow, handle things. You know, I could handle having a dickhead coworker because that wasn't like, you know, reaching out and, you know, going into my heart. You know, it wasn't like any Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom where that thuggy, you know, priest is like ripping a guy's heart out of his chest. You know, it wasn't like that. You know, it was like, okay, this guy's a dickhead and screw him, and I'm just gonna, you know, get through this. You know, but then when you toss a girl in there, you got, you know, the feels for her, and you got that lust for her, that desire for her, and you kind of you get invested in succeeding with her, and it's at work, and it's supposed to be like it's supposed to be an environment where you know, everybody's, you know, one of the guys, but you know, even if they're a girl, and it's like, no, this girl's different, she's not one of the guys, she's that girl, and blah blah blah. I don't know how to respond to that sort of stuff. It's something else, you know. But what I'm doing right now, other than being here, really is to what I've been doing rather is I've been working on other stuff. I'm sort of trying to find the silver lining in all of this, and one of the things that I've found is that I have all this time to go do all this other stuff, and what I've been doing has been writing code. On Reddit, they have the subreddit for the biotech, and you know, since I read this article from this website called Rave Robot on like the top 10 skills you should have if you want to develop a career in automation. One of the top 10 skills was, you know, knowing how to program. And the guy gave a list of languages. It was like Python, R, SQL, C#. Those were like the top 4, I think. I think the 5th one was Scala. But I went on the subreddit for biotech, and I was looking, you know, searching for bioinformatics, and I came across some posts where they talked about, oh, you know, you should write, you know, Python scripts for bioinformatics stuff, and here's like a link, you know, to a website, rosalind.info, and one of the subsections of the website is like a list of like 285 bioinformatics problems, and the idea is to go write a Python script that solves that problem. So I've been working on those, and like some of the ones that I wrote based off some tutorials, I actually I found out that those are, you know, basically like those are questions or problems that they propose in this list. So I already had a couple of them done. But yeah, basically I started doing that, and then on top of that I was working on a couple more I completed a couple more Hamilton methods. I don't know if they're error proof. I may, you know, bring those to the attention of the Hamilton guys when I'm, you know, taking that certification thing, and I might just, you know, I might try to simulate them, write down the errors that I was getting, and then basically ask them about this sort of stuff. But I've been doing that, and it's something that, see, like I've been meaning to do it for so damn long, stuff like that. And I could pick away at things here and there. I eventually had to try to drop that, you know, fully for a time because of the whole, you know, to deal with the class. But you know, it's sort of like this deal with like being in a job like that, where it's like they'll tell you, oh, after a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long, you know, depending on the company, you can apply to switch to a different group. And it's like, yeah, you can apply after a year, but there's no guarantee you're going to get the job. You know, and what if you get pigeonholed into this sort of thing? And even if you could, even if there was like a significant likelihood or chance of, you know, switching out, what does that require? That requires that outside of work, you're like, for 4 or 5 hours a day, you're just like coding, you know, for this automated liquid handling robot, or you're writing bioinformatics code in Python, or you're writing scripts in Python, R, Scala, C# to go and solve these bioinformatics problems. You're doing all this extra work outside of that. And I was only able to do that for so long before other things started getting in the way, or I had to sort of change stuff up because it was just so exhausting. And I get that it's supposed to be, hard work and all that, and I'm not averse to working hard, especially on something that you actually want. But it became a problem, and it was sort of like, on top of that, there's this whole thing where, getting a master's degree, something that I've wanted to do, period, regardless of whether somebody threw 100K plus job my way. But then there's that aspect where it's like, okay, yeah, and, also getting a master's would definitely increase your chances, and I'm going to try to do all this sort of stuff, and now it's like, okay, I actually have some time on my hands, and I can try and, while I've got a month or two, maybe before the next job, I can write a bunch of Python code and some Hamilton methods and, beef up my GitHub and et cetera, and, get some certification or certifications lined up and, all that sort of stuff. And, really get the ball rolling with that, because, like, I've got to take this time, this opportunity to, like, not only bounce back, but, like, really make that kind of progress that I'm just like, I do not want to be in this spot again, So much of it is making yourself as invulnerable not only to being fired or laid off, basically losing your job, but also just not in the kind of situation, the kind of, environment, surrounded by the kind of people where you're inevitably going to have these kinds of problems. Because I can tell you pretty much for a fact, I can't do it 100%, but I could say pretty much for a fact, if I was working around engineers, I know engineers, okay? I got my degree in engineering. Generally speaking, the ones who have made it and gotten out into the industry and are doing their thing, they don't got no time for no hanky-panky, patty cake BS, They're not doing the kind of repetitive work where it's just like, oh, well, I got an hour downtime, honey, sweet thing, sweetheart, baby, you want to go, do some, indoor gymnastics, but outdoors, in the car out in the parking lot. We'll hop in my car, we'll drive to the other side of the parking lot, and we can do there's none of that, for the most part. I would say, I would say, like I said, I can't say 100%, but I'd say, like, if there's 50-50 of that going on in the lower grade of things, it's probably like 75, 80, maybe even 90% or 95% not going on, especially since most of the people who are at that level, they're, probably already in a long-term relationship, they're married, they got kids, they got enough on their freaking plate, that they're just not doing that, and they're thinking at such a higher level, that you can't really kind of afford to be getting involved in that kind of stuff, because it'll get in the way of you getting your work done, and not just getting your work done, but making the sort of next level, cutting edge decisions and actions and creating those kinds of results. And there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more on your shoulders. It's not just, okay, cap these tubes and load this and unload that and label this and label. It's just like, your mind has to be focused in on what you're working on, Whereas if you're just some manufacturing associate, unless the company culture is such that, hey, we don't do that. Truth is that that on that lower level of things, especially when you're dealing with like 20-something-year-olds who, have their heads up their own butts, they're, me, and all that, immature. You got that kind of environment where, there's problems that can and will arise. And is this something that, you know, I don't want to have repeat again. So I'm having to do the most I can with the time that I have to get myself to that point where I can consider myself qualified or skilled enough to walk into an interview, assuming I can get one for a job like that, and be able to, you know, perform and get that job, get that career move going, because I don't want to do this again. You know, I don't want to go through this again. Especially when you think about Nofap and not wanting to be in a situation where a relapse is inevitable and there's no way out of it. Because I've used Nofap as a barometer for how well I'm handling my life. You know, I've only ever been relapsing when things got just so bad I couldn't handle it and I dropped the ball and that was it. And I was just like, I can't take this anymore. You know, when I've been handling my life well, PMO hasn't really even been a thought. Like, I got into points where I've been vlogging about things and been like, you know what, I want to move beyond Nofap on this channel, you know, because I'm not even thinking about PMO. Why? Because I'm handling my life. I'm doing my thing, you know. I'm doing the work. I'm getting the results, you know. But anyways, this has been a super long video. I've had a lot on my mind. I may stay here for another half an hour and, you know, go through the store and maybe buy something. I don't know. I'm just trying to avoid getting one of those tickets, because on these days, it's like every Tuesday, I think of the second Tuesday of the month or something like that, third Tuesday of the month, they have street cleaning day, and basically if your car is parked out on the street side and you know, they come by, they can give you a ticket. And back when I had my job, I'd be out of there by like 6:30 at the latest. And I'd be on the road, and, you know, 8 a.m. would roll around, and my car wouldn't be there because my car would be at work because I had driven myself to work. So, but I had to, you know, I had to force this. I went and filled up my tank with gas, even though I'm not really driving anywhere, but, you know, I did that, and then I came over here, and I might just bum around the store for half an hour and just look around and whatever. But anyways, this is probably the longest video I've made in quite a while. When I get back home, I'm probably just going to go back to doing more Python scripting and just whatever I can do to keep myself busy. I don't know if I really feel like applying for jobs right now. I mean, you know, I know my old man, my pops, my dad, telling me I should, you know, be getting out there and doing that sort of thing. Don't be dependent upon going back to the old place, etc., etc. But I'm sorry, phone slipped again. That's gonna be a little bit of a blooper in this video. I'm gonna hold this here until I finish talking. But sorry, but I'm feeling like it'd be almost a waste of time to be putting in an application for a lot of these jobs, because it's like I literally can't, you know, say, okay, I can't show that I got a demonstrated history of blah blah blah, you know, work and that sort of thing, when I don't even have a fully filled up, you know, GitHub account, and I don't have years of work experience in a specific role and all that kind of stuff, you know. So anyways, like I said, I'm gonna bum around here probably for another half an hour and then head back home and then try and get onto something that I'll be doing, you know, chores and coding, and maybe I'll try to find some movie to watch or so. But anywho, I will see you folks around. Sorry for you know, the camera dropping, phone dropping, excuse me. But anyways, see you around. It's Nofap day 1 again, and trying to bounce back. So thanks for watching, and thanks for sticking around, subscribed and all that. So take care, and bye-bye.